Welcome to Study Hall, and get ready for Art Explored.
Whoa.
Today we're diving headfirst into a true icon, something you've definitely seen, even if you maybe don't know all the juicy details. Leonardo da Vinci's The Last Supper.
Oh, absolutely. It's one of those images, isn't it? And yeah, if you've ever looked at it and thought, okay, what's really going on here, then, well, this is for you.
Right.
We're going to unpack the story behind it, the historical buzz, and some of the really clever stuff Leonardo actually wove into the paint, and hopefully do it in a way that feels more like chatting about something cool than sitting through a lecture.
Exactly. So our mission today, it's more than just recognizing the painting. We want to get into why it's such a massive deal. Like, what did Leonardo actually do that was so revolutionary? Tell us about his time, about Leonardo himself.
And let's be real, why does this, frankly, quite faded, kind of battered old painting still grab our attention so much centuries later?
Totally. So we'll dig into how it was made, how it connects to his other big hits, and some of the really mind-blowing ideas that scholars, art detectives maybe, have come up with.
Art detectives, I like that. Okay, so where do we start?
Okay, let's set the scene. Picture this. Milan, late 1400s. What's the vibe? How does Leonardo even end up there?
Right, okay, so imagine Milan as like the Renaissance hotspot, a real hub of creativity, money, power. We're talking the dawn of the High Renaissance.
Okay.
And Leonardo. He rocks up in the early 1480s. He gets involved with the court of Ludovico Sforza. Now, Sforza was, he was the Duke, a major power player and a huge patron of the arts. Think big ambitions, big money.
A Renaissance tech mogul, maybe?
Yeah, something like that. And Sforza had this grand vision for the Dominican convent and church of Santa Maria delle Grazie. He wanted to turn it into basically a Sforza family mausoleum.
Wow, okay. So not just a church renovation. This was about legacy.
Absolutely. A spiritual statement, but also, a dynastic one, very high Renaissance.
So where does our famous dinner party fit into this grand plan?
It fits into the refectory that's just the monks' dining hall.
Right.
And putting a Last Supper scene in a refectory, that was actually pretty traditional. It creates this sort of connection, between the monks eating their meals and Christ's final one.
Not clever. Makes sense.
So Sforza commissions Leonardo to paint the Last Supper there around, say, 1494, maybe 1495, as part of this whole beautification project. And Sforza, he's almost certainly expecting something impressive, fashionable, a real showpiece.
Nothing to show off with.
Exactly. Look how pious and sophisticated we Sforzas are.
And weren't there other, Sforza logos dotted around the place, too? It wasn't just the painting sending that message.
Oh, spot on. If you look above the main painting, in those curved sections, the lunettes, you'd originally find the Sforza coat of arms painted there. Plus, turn around, look at the opposite wall. There was another fresco, a crucifixion scene, and Leonardo even added portraits of Sforza family members into that.
No subtlety there, then.
Not really. It really underlined that dual purpose. Honoring Christ, yes, but also making sure everyone knew who paid for it all. Celebrating the Sforza dynasty.
Okay, so Leonardo lands this massive, prestigious commission. Now, normally, painting on a wall back then meant fresco, right? Paint on wet plaster.
That's the standard, yeah, buon fresco.
But Leonardo, being Leonardo, didn't do that, did he? Why ditch the tried and tested method?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. Buon fresco, true fresco, is incredibly durable because the pigment chemically bonds with the plaster as it dries.
Right, it becomes part of the wall.
Exactly. But the catch is you have to work incredibly fast, section by section, before the plaster dries. There's not much room for error, or, crucially for Leonardo, for slow, detailed work, blending, rethinking things.
Ah, so it cramped his style, especially for that famous smoky effect he loved, this sfumato.
Precisely. You just can't achieve that level of subtle blending and detail easily in true fresco. He preferred oil paint, the richness, the luminosity, the way you could work it slowly, layer it, achieve those soft transitions like in the Mona Lisa. Fresco is just too blunt for him.
So what was his solution, his big experiment?
He basically invented his own technique. He decided to paint a secco, meaning on a dry wall, using a kind of hybrid mix of oil paint and tempera.
Oil and tempera on a dry wall. That sounds risky.
It was risky, hugely experimental. He prepared the wall, but not in a way designed for traditional fresco.
How did he prep it? What were the layers?
Okay, so reports suggest he first sealed the wall, then applied a ground layer, maybe a double layer of gesso that's like a plaster-based primer. But he mixed it with things like pitch and mastic.
Weird ingredients. Why?
Probably trying to create a really smooth, non-absorbent, maybe even moisture-resistant surface for the paint. Then on top of that, a layer of white lead.
For brightness.
Exactly, to make the colors applied on top really luminous and vibrant. And then finally, he painted the scene with his oil and tempera mix onto this dry, prepared surface.
So the upside was creative freedom. He could paint almost like he was working on a canvas.
That was the idea. More time, more detail, richer colors, the ability to get those sfumato effects, the deep shadows, the chiaroscuro.
That intense light and dark contrast.
Right. The immediate results must have been absolutely stunning. Unlike anything seen on a wall painting before in terms of subtlety and realism, early viewers were apparently blown away by the lifelike quality.
But there's always a but, isn't there? Especially with experiments.
Unfortunately, yes. A very big but. This revolutionary technique turned out to be, well, disastrously unstable in the long run.
Why? What went wrong?
The biggest culprit was moisture. That particular refectory wall was known to be damp. It was an exterior wall, maybe built with materials that held water. And because Leonardo's paint wasn't chemically bonded into the wall like fresco,
It was just sitting on the surface.
pretty much, so the moisture seeping through the wall attacked the paint layers from behind. It couldn't adhere properly. Within just a few years, some say even before he'd officially finished, the paint started to bubble, flake, and peel off.
Oh, that's brutal.
Yeah,
Absolutely heartbreaking for him, surely.
you'd think so. He poured so much into it. But ironically, even as it was falling apart, its genius was recognized. People knew it was special.
So it wasn't like it just crumbled away unnoticed.
Not at all. King Louis XII of France saw it not long after it was done, maybe 1499, and was apparently so impressed he actually considered trying to cut the entire wall out of the building to take it back to France.
Wow, that's ambitious.
And impossible, luckily. But it shows the impact it had. Plus, other artists started making copies almost immediately, which tells you they saw its importance and wanted to study it before it vanished completely.
Still, fast forward just a few decades to the mid-16th century, and Giorgio Vasari, the art historian, he was impressed with its condition, was he?
No, Vasari famously wrote about how ruined it was by then. He described it as basically a muddle of blots where the figures were barely distinguishable. It's quite tragic, really. A masterpiece built on flawed foundations.
Okay, so the technique was a mixed bag, brilliant idea, poor execution in terms of longevity. Let's talk about the look of it, the composition. When you stand back, what hits you first?
The incredible sense of order, despite the drama. You've got that long table parallel to us, the viewers. Christ is dead center. All the apostles are on the far side, looking towards us almost.
Like we're right there with them.
Exactly. And Leonardo groups them so cleverly. 4 groups of 3 apostles flanking Christ. It creates rhythm and structure.
And Christ's central position feels absolutely deliberate. It's like everything pulls your eye towards him.
Totally. That's the magic of linear perspective, which Leonardo uses masterfully here. All the architectural lines in the painted room, the ceiling coffers, the wall tapestries, if you follow them, they all converge at a single vanishing point.
And that point is?
Right on Christ's right temple. It's incredibly precise. It locks your focus onto him, reinforces his importance, and gives the whole scene this amazing depth and mathematical logic.
It also makes the painted room feel like it's just an extension of the real refectory, doesn't it? Like you could step right into it.
Yes. That trompe-l'œil, the fool the eye effect, that was definitely intentional. He designed the perspective, the lighting, even the depicted table setting to harmonize with the actual space of the monks' dining hall.
So the monks eating their dinner would have felt like they were almost in the painting.
That seems to have been the goal, blurring the line between their world and this sacred event, making it immediate, present.
How different was this setup from earlier Last Suppers? Did other artists do it this way?
Not quite like this. Some earlier artists, like Castagno, isolated Judas completely on our side of the table, made him the obvious outsider.
Ah, okay, less subtle.
Much less. Others, like Ghirlandaio, had everyone on the far side, but the emotional reactions were often more subdued, less individualized. Leonardo's genius was putting Judas among the others, heightening the psychological tension, capturing this explosion of different specific emotions all down the line.
And light plays a big role in that too, right? Not just perspective.
Huge role. Leonardo was a master of light and shadow chiaroscuro. The main light source seems to come from the window behind Christ, framing him, almost giving him a natural halo.
While Judas is.
Often depicted in shadow, leaning back, face obscured. It's symbolic, of course, darkness versus light, but it also makes him seem shifty, isolated within the group. And the light models the figures, gives them volume, makes them feel solid and real.
I've also heard people talk about hidden geometry, triangles, pyramids in the composition. Is that
Yeah.
real or just overanalyzing?
It's definitely real. Leonardo was obsessed with mathematics, proportion, harmony. You can clearly see a stable pyramid shape formed by Christ.
Yeah, his arms outstretched.
Exactly. And the groups of apostles on either side can also be seen as forming triangular or pyramidal shapes. It wasn't accidental. It reflects Renaissance ideals about balance, order, divine proportion. Remember, he worked with the mathematician Luca Pacioli. These ideas were central to his thinking.
Wow. So it's not just a picture at dinner. It's this incredibly complex, mathematically structured psychological drama. Okay, let's dive into that drama. Christ has just said, one of you will betray me. Boom. How does Leonardo show that impact?
Leonardo famously said that a painter should depict the motions of the mind, and here he does it brilliantly. He freezes the action right at that moment of maximum impact, and what you get is this wave, this cascade of human reactions rippling down the table.
Shock, anger, fear.
All of it. Shock, denial, indignation, sorrow, suspicion, guilt. It's an absolute masterclass in depicting individual psychology within a group dynamic.
Can we, go down the line, left to right? Who's reacting how?
Let's do it. Far left, you have Bartholomew. He's literally pushing himself up from the table, leaning forward, intense, startled, like, what did he just say?
Okay.
Next, James the Lesser. He looks surprised, maybe reaching out towards Peter or Andrew, questioning. Then Andrew, hands thrown up, palms forward, a classic gesture of shock and horror. No, it can't be.
Okay, that first group is pure shock. Then we get to the group with Judas.
Yeah, the emotional core, maybe. You've got Judas physically recoiling, clutching his money bag, face in shadow. He looks guilty as sin. And notice the spilled salt cellar near his elbow.
Oh, yeah. Symbol of bad luck, broken trust.
Exactly. Broken trust, betrayal. And crucially, his hand is reaching towards a dish at the same time as Jesus' hand, visually identifying him as the one Christ referred to.
Chilling detail. And Peter next to him.
Peter looks furious. He's leaning in aggressively towards John, and behind his back, he's gripping a knife.
The knife. Foreshadowing him cutting off the guard's ear later.
That's the common interpretation, yes. Impulsive, protective Peter. And then there's John, traditionally the youngest, the beloved disciple. He looks overwhelmed, almost swooning with grief, leaning towards Peter. It's this intense knot of anger, guilt, and sorrow.
Wow. Okay, then Jesus in the middle, seemingly calm amidst the storm.
Calm, yes, but also isolated. His eyes are downcast, hands gesturing outwards, one towards bread, one towards wine. A gesture of acceptance, perhaps. Offering himself. It sets him apart from the human chaos swirling around him.
Right there, group 2 is right.
First is Thomas, famously doubting Thomas. He's pointing upwards, finger raised. Is he questioning Jesus, asking for clarification, foreshadowing his later demand for proof of the resurrection? It's ambiguous, but intense.
Okay.
Next, James the Greater. Arms thrown wide, palms up, utter astonishment, disbelief, like how is this possible? Then Philip, leaning forward, pointing towards himself with both hands, a very earnest gesture, Lord, is it I? Protesting his innocence.
And the final group at the far right end.
They seem to be conferring. Matthew's turned towards the last two, Thaddeus or Jude, and Simon the Zealot, gesturing towards Christ as if explaining or asking, what's going on? Who could it be? Thaddeus looks troubled, talking intently with Simon, who seems older, perhaps calmer, more contemplative, listening gravely.
It's just incredible. Each one a distinct person, a distinct reaction. That must have been revolutionary compared to earlier art.
Absolutely revolutionary. Before Leonardo, apostles and Last Suppers often looked quite similar, maybe expressing general piety or concern.
Yeah.
To give each one such specific, intense, psychologically believable emotions, that was a huge leap forward. It really brings the story to life in a human way.
And beyond the emotions, we touched on symbols like the salt and the knife. Are there other layers of meaning packed in there?
Definitely. Judas's bag is the most obvious symbol of the betrayal payment. Thomas's finger connects to his doubt. The shared dish identifies the betrayer. But there's a bigger symbolic interpretation, too.
Which is?
The idea, championed particularly by the art historian Leo Steinberg, that Leonardo isn't just showing the announcement of the betrayal. He's simultaneously depicting the institution of the Eucharist.
The moment Christ offers the bread and wine as his body and blood. How do we see that?
Look at Christ's hands again. One gestures towards the bread on the table, the other towards the cup of wine. These actions, combined with his serene, almost sacrificial expression, can be read not just in the context of the betrayal, one of you, but also as the foundational moment of communion. Take, eat, this is my body, drink from it all of you, for this is my blood.
So it's like two key moments layered onto one image. The human drama of betrayal and the divine mystery of the Eucharist happening at the same instant.
That's Steinberg's influential argument, and it makes a lot of sense. It adds this profound theological depth beneath the surface of the emotional turmoil. The painting becomes about both human failure and divine sacrifice.
That really elevates it, doesn't it? It connects back to that Renaissance blend of humanism and faith, focusing on human emotion, yes, but also embedding deep spiritual meaning.
Exactly. You have the very human reactions making the sacred story relatable, but you also have the geometry, the perspective representing reason and order framing this moment of immense religious significance. It's a synthesis.
Okay, so this incredibly complex, technically flawed, but artistically brilliant painting gets finished. What happens next? How does its influence spread, especially given its condition?
Its influence was immediate and massive. Despite the decay, it became the definitive image of the Last Supper for centuries. Countless artists copied it, adapted it, responded to it.
Are the copies important?
Hugely important, especially early, faithful copies like the one by Leonardo's pupil Giampietrino. Because the original deteriorated so fast, these copies give us our best idea of what it might have looked like originally. The colors, the lost details. They're crucial for understanding Leonardo's intent.
So it shaped high Renaissance art and beyond.
Absolutely. Its composition, its psychological intensity, its integration of figures, it set a new benchmark. Later masters kept looking back at it.
But the original itself, it's been through the ringer over the centuries, hasn't it? Damage, restorations.
Oh, completely. Besides the initial decay, it suffered from clumsy restoration attempts, environmental damage, even damage during wartime. A door was famously cut through the bottom of it. Monks weren't always careful.
Oh, door. Oh, the humanity.
I know. And then there were numerous restoration campaigns over the centuries. Some were well-intentioned, but used materials or techniques that ultimately obscured or damaged what little was left of Leonardo's work. Varnishes darkened, repaint covered original layers.
Until the big one in the late 20th century.
Right, the massive restoration project that lasted over 20 years, from 1978 to 1999, led by Pinin Brambilla Barcelon. The goal was incredibly painstaking: to remove centuries of dirt, grime, glue, varnish, and overpainting to get back as much as possible to Leonardo's original layer.
And was it successful? Controversial?
Both, really. It was incredibly controversial. Using solvents, microscopes, scientific analysis, they did uncover details and colors that hadn't been seen for ages. You can see expressions more clearly now. But critics argued that maybe too much was removed, including potentially some original Leonardo touches. Some felt the result looked too clean, almost like a watercolor, lacking the richness they imagined. And the stark reality is, what we see today is only a fraction, maybe 20%. Some estimate even less of the actual paint applied by Leonardo's hand. Much of it is filler or the work of restorers tracing the lines.
Wow. So it's almost like a ghost of the original painting.
In a way, yes. A ghost that's still incredibly powerful, but a ghost nonetheless. And scholars are still debating it, still finding new interpretations.
Like the musical notes theory.
Exactly. The idea that the arrangement of the bread rolls in the apostles' hands might correspond to musical notation. Whether it's true or not, it shows how this painting continues to fascinate and generate new ways of looking.
When we put the Last Supper alongside Leonardo's other huge hits, say the Mona Lisa or Vitruvian Man, what are the common threads? What screams Leonardo?
Well, with the Mona Lisa, it's that shared focus on psychological depth, that sense of an inner life, conveyed differently. Of course, subtle enigma versus overt drama, but it's there. And technically, both show his mastery of sfumato, that soft, smoky blending and creating atmospheric depth. Compositionally, he often liked pyramidal structures. You see it in Mona Lisa's pose and in the Christ group here. Both paintings really draw the viewer in.
And Vitruvian Man. That feels more scientific.
It is, but it connects through Leonardo's obsession with harmonious proportion, the underlying mathematical structure of things. Vitruvian Man is about the ideal geometry of the human body linking to the cosmos. The Last Supper, while telling a story, is built on that same foundation of rigorous perspective and balanced, almost geometric composition. It's that synthesis of art and science again.
So across his work, it's this search for truth, harmony, and telling stories visually.
I think so. A deep reverence for observing nature and humanity, finding the underlying structures, and then translating that into these incredibly composed, psychologically rich visual narratives. That's the Leonardo magic, and it's why The Last Supper, even faded and damaged, still resonates so powerfully.
So wrapping up this deep dive, It's clear the Last Supper is way more than just, a famous picture.
Oh, much more.
It's a snapshot of the Renaissance, right?
Yeah.
A testament to Leonardo's insane curiosity and his willingness to break the rules, even if it backfired technically.
Absolutely. And it's this profound meditation on human emotion, betrayal, loyalty, fear, faith, all packed into one incredibly charged moment.
We've seen how he innovated, how he experimented, and how he layered meaning upon meaning.
So here's something to chew on, maybe. Even in this fragmented, fragile state, the Last Supper keeps sparking debate, keeps drawing people in. Millions of them.
Yeah.
What does that actually tell us about the power of art? About how it can just leap across centuries and speak to us about, well, being human?
That's a great point. Maybe the next time you, listening, see an image of it, you won't just see a famous painting.
Hopefully you'll see that complex tapestry, right? The history, the innovation, the drama, the fragility, the survival. What stands out to you now, after hearing all this? What new questions pop up?
Definitely worth pondering. We hope this has given you some fresh perspectives and maybe sparked your own curiosity to explore even more about this truly incredible work of art.